As a good portion of the team knows, I spent the last, a good portion of yesterday and part of this morning preparing a sermon for this morning, and I was a little stressed about it because I usually take a little more time at it. And then I get a message from the Holy Spirit to throw the whole thing out. All right. There it is. A lot of people here really do not know who I am. Okay, you've heard my name perhaps, and you're aware that there's a church in Utah, and that there was an opportunity to come up here on a missions trip. And this is, I believe, the fifth one? I think so, yeah. Because the first one was coming up in July of 2018 to move us up, originally. And then when we launched, we had a great, in the summer of 2019, had a great family fun festival out at the park in Richfield. And then we had another trip during 2020. It was a very small one. And then 2021, we had the big rain fest over at Monroe Park. And then here you are now. It rained a little bit, so we kind of joke around. Let's ask you to stay up here so we can break our drought. Since there's something about Monrovia coming up that there's rain. But a lot of people just don't know what brought a retired school teacher from the Monrovia Unified School District, but taught 30 years in different places, but ending up in Monrovia, first at Clifton Middle School and then over at Canyon Oaks High School. What brought you up here? Aside from the obvious fact that you're trying to escape from California. Keep in mind at that point in time, California wasn't as bad as it turned into later. I got out just in time. I'm not sure how well I would have functioned under COVID down there. Particularly since, I'm not vaccinated, and I don't have any intentions of doing so. Not because I'm anti-vax or anything, it's just I don't trust something that was developed in less than a year. But that's just me. If you are vaccinated, great, God protect you. I'm not vaccinated, God protect me. Same thing. But a lot of it goes back, and I figured I was going to share this. I've shared it with a few people this weekend, but I wanted to let's get it out of the way. A lot of you have heard this already. Some, it was a while back. But some may just, I'd like to hear that story again. And if you don't, you can sleep at this time. No one's going to scream. Unless you snore. And notice I can have lots of cups of iced tea up here. Yeah, I drink it, but anyway. Use your imagination what I might do with this. But a lot of what happened started 20 years ago. Now let me give you a little background on myself. I was born and raised in Pasadena and Altadena, California. No, I never went down to watch the Rose Parade. I thought the TV was a much better place to watch it. I had cousins that loved to do it. I never felt the need. And I graduated from a Christian school, Pasadena Christian, and from junior high, and then Maranatha High School, when I was still in Arcadia for high school. And at that point in time, I was not a believer. Even though I heard the word. And at one time I thought I was a believer simply because in a little four-square church in Pasadena, when I was 5 years old, or about 4 or 5, I went down, the pastor had an altar call, and it was a four-square church, so, people speaking in tongues and so forth, no mystery to me. It was really kind of neat. But I figured, it pleased my grandma if I went down and I said the sinner's prayer with the pastor who was there. And everybody was so tickled pink that I did this. And I was so it's like, wow, this is cool, that I went down the next Sunday and did it all over again. Of course, it was explained that you'd only have to do it once. But it showed me something important. It should have. I was too young at the time to know it. But later, I figured it out. I was just saying a bunch of words. I wasn't a believer. I just said the words to please my grandmother. I had no clue what I was saying and what it all meant all about. Now, being in a Christian environment, church-going grandmother, my family itself were not churchgoers. My dad was a non-practicing Catholic, and my mother was a rebel. those who knew my mother. That pretty much says it all. She was a rebel. And so my grandmother was the one that took me to church. And my grandmother was the one that helped pave the way for my sister and I to attend Christian schools. My dad worked overtime so I could afford to go to Maranatha High School. And I actually brought people to the Lord. I had an academic understanding of the scriptures and of salvation. Okay? But it wasn't here. Oops, here. That very vital 18 inches, it wasn't there. And how I knew this is when I got to college. Okay? Actually, I should have realized it sooner because toward my end of my senior year, I just wanted to get out of there. I hated my school. I hated the people I went to school with. Part of it is that I looked at them as these richos that only cared about themselves, which was partially true, but there was more. Instead of having the heart of the Savior looking at these guys as spoiled brats, I realized these guys need the Savior. I should be talking to them. I should be witnessing to them. Okay? But no, I didn't. I just wanted to get away from there. And in 1981, off to UC Riverside, I went with a degree, going for a degree of geophysics, and it all went down from there. Because I was no longer under that spiritual umbrella. Okay? So by the time I graduated, I was still incredibly unhappy. And was not happy about a lot of the things I did. And I finally decided, as all of us should do, I need God. I need to get back to where I was. And I went to a little four-square, actually it was a not so little four-square church in Riverside, California. And the pastor was preaching on Romans 1, okay, which by coincidence we're going through on Tuesdays in men's study. But if you read through Romans 1, and I'm not going to do it right now, if you read through Romans 1, it gives you a hint of how when a person turns their back on God, how low they can go. I didn't fortunately go as low as was described there, but one part hit me very between the eyes. And you hear me quoted all the time, professing to be wise, they became fools. And if you've ever been to a college campus or a university, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They are some of the biggest fools in the world, but they may be the smartest people on the planet. Okay? And I was among those. I thought I could get away with it. I could do what I wanted. I didn't. Now, if before you think horrible things of me, no, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't chew, I didn't go with girls that do. I wasn't into drugs or anything like that. It was sin with women. I'll just say that much, and we don't need to go any further in that. I'm human. I'm not perfect, pastor though I may be. That's just a title. Didn't define me back in the 80s. But at this little four-square church in Riverside, that's when I actually did give my life to the Lord in 1986. And I was happy. But I had no vision of what the Lord wanted to do with me. I got married soon thereafter, not to Alicia, but to my first wife, Joanne. And we had a son together, Wesley. She died of cancer in 1995. Okay, there was no divorce or anything like that. And Alicia and I, we got married in 1996. Now that may sound like a whirlwind courtship. No, we've known each other for quite a while. Okay, so there was no need to, we have to get to know one another. We knew one another. She had talked to me a lot of times about things that were going on in her life. There was no hanky-panky, no things like that. There shouldn't have been. I was her teacher. She was my student. But and anyone here knows that teachers, there are certain teachers that you may have had in the past that you knew you could talk to and you could confide in, and I was that teacher to her. In fact, I set her up with, I don't know, one boyfriend, maybe two. I set her up with boyfriends. So obviously I wasn't interested, and of course she wasn't interested in me. It wasn't until after she graduated and after my wife died that the Lord basically said, you two are to get married. How do I know? Easy, I can dream about it. God does speak in dreams and visions sometimes. And it was weird because that was the last thing on my mind. I had just, I had lost a wife a year before. I was dealing with a 4-year-old boy. He was starting kindergarten. And dealing all the things that a single dad has to deal with, the last thing on my mind at that point was getting married again. But at some point, the Lord said, no, this is what you need to do. And apparently he spoke to Alicia as well, and we got married in 1996. And have been married ever since. If you do the math, it's almost 26 years. Okay? And a lot of people predicted it wasn't going to last because of the age gap. And for your own curiosity, the age gap is 15 years. Okay? And it's wonderful. It's been wonderful. And after we got married, it was in around early 2000s that we started feeling the tug for Utah. Can't really describe it. I've always loved Utah as a place to go to visit, as a place to come to, go to Zion National Park or Bryce Canyon or Cedar Breaks, and it's just a beautiful place. I even toyed with the idea of moving here. Even when Joanne was still alive, we thought it would be a great place to live because at that point, St. George was essentially Richfield. Okay, maybe a little bit bigger, but they rolled up the sidewalks at sunset, and everything was closed on Sunday, just like it kind of is here. And we figured, this would be a nice place to raise kids. Okay, never happened. Same thing with Alicia and I. Well, let's do it. What can we do? Well, let's see what we can do. And I looked into it. I looked into job, but it just never worked out. It wasn't the Lord's timing. Okay, but at some point we got involved at Calvary Chapel, Monrovia. And one day I sat down with Pastor Richard. We went to lunch, and I told him my heart. It's like, look, we want to be set out. We don't know when. We don't know how this is going to work. Our heart is for Utah. And strange as it may seem, Pastor Richard had the same feeling. He said, yeah, the Holy Spirit's prompting me in that direction too. Now, I didn't know if he was agreeing with me or if he was trying to push me out the door early. I don't know. Either way, we both looked into that. And so time went on, and things just weren't pointing to Utah at that point. Where we really started getting the push was as I was getting closer to retirement. It kind of struck me that, I can move up here as a retired teacher. We'd make it okay because the cost of living is so much less. And I wouldn't be having to work. I wouldn't be beholden to everyone because at that point in time, a non-LDS person moving to Utah, you're taking a great risk, especially if you landed in a small town. Because at that point in time, they would shun you because you're an outsider. Okay? So it would be hard to get a job in that case. Okay? Even as a teacher, they'd find something wrong with you because you weren't part of the church. And I didn't want to have to deal with stuff like that. And I think the Lord in his wisdom understood that and said, no, you don't have to. And that's where I started thinking, you turn 55 in 2017, and you have your 30 years in 2018. Guess what? The door just opened. Okay, and I've shared that with Pastor Richard, and he thought, I never thought of that. That's a great idea. But how to go up here? We knew nobody up here. And here's the thing. We didn't even know this place existed. Okay? One day, or one Christmas vacation, Lisa and I, we had Robbie, and we went up here to kind of scout the land. When I say up here, up to Utah, we were looking more around in southwestern Utah, St. George, Kanab, places like that, Cedar City. And we knew there were Calvary chapels there. At that time, there were 8 Calvary chapels in the entire state of Utah. Okay, one of them was in St. George. It's the largest non-LDS church in southern Utah. They at that time had 400 people, which is huge. Okay, they're about 600 now. Okay, they're still growing, but there's a lot of people coming in. But that's the largest one in that part, non-Mormon church in southern Utah. And then there was a Calvary chapel in Cedar City. And they're a little smaller. They're about, 150, 200? Yeah, something like that. So we're a blip on the radar, but a very small blip. And we talked with both pastors. We want to get their feel. This is our vision. Where do you think we could go? And both of them had a lot of great advice. But Pastor Rick in St. George said, there's a place I'd like you to look at. Since you're here, you got time. It's not that far away. It's located about halfway between Los Angeles and Denver along Interstate 70. And it's a little town called Richfield. Okay, never heard of it. Actually, I looked at my map and I realized, oh yeah, I stopped for gas there once and I remembered nothing about it. And it's like, okay, let's go. And we're talking after Christmas, so we're talking late December. It's cold in St. George. And we had a little minivan at the time. We went north and said, let's do it. We had plenty of time. We drove up, and it's a beautiful drive. If you've seen it. You went up 15, you know it's a beautiful drive. It's really beautiful in the winter. And we go over that pass on I-70 going up over here. And just looking at 3 feet of snow on the highway just all around us. It's like, oh, interesting. It snows up here a lot more than I thought. But at the time, I never thought, well, that's a bad thing. It's just like, oh, fascinating. And we get over the hill, and we start going down into Sevier Valley. And if you've taken if you've got cut off here, you don't see that view. But if you're going north on the 70, the valley opens up before you. And both Alicia and I said at the same time, this is the place. Spirit told me, hey, this is where I want you. And it's 16 degrees, it's 16 degrees, and about 6 inches of snow on the ground. And you're looking at a man who at some point said, I'm never going to live where there's snow. I'm never going to be a pastor. Shows how much I know. Professing to be wise, I was looking the fool. So we pull into town, and here's a hint. If you ever want to go somewhere and find out what the community's like, go to Walmart. You will find out what the community is like because everybody ends up there. So we stopped, and as I said, it's 16 degrees out, but it's beautifully clear. And I had a heavy jacket on. I was dressed up. I had a lot of stuff. It was hot in that jacket. Okay, I'm walking out there, and there's these huge trucks. They're lifted like this with icicles this long sticking off under the fenders and so forth. It's that big, and it's like, wow, that's cool. I'd never seen that before, and we had a few icicles on our car too. I'm thinking, wow, that's interesting. I'm not cold. Okay, I took my jacket off. I still had a sweater underneath, and that was comfortable. We go in, and everybody was so friendly. Hey, how you doing? Now, a few of them kind of looked at us because, well, we're new in town. We don't know you. So they kind of look at you a little strange. But after the initial shock of a newcomer in Walmart, they treated you nice. Some people came up and apparently thought we knew what we were talking about. Do you know where this is? And you happen to have walked through that particular department. Oh, yeah, you go back that way. Go turn right. Okay, thanks. And these other guys just, they're looking for something. And he says, could you read that for me? I can't quite read it. So, let me look at that. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it was a totally different world compared to Doherty Walmart. Okay? Even the San Dimas Walmart was the one that we usually went to because we didn't like the Doherty Walmart. And if you're insulted because you live in Doherty, be insulted. You live in Doherty, I feel for you. It's a beautiful town, but I wouldn't want to live there anymore. Why? Because God said you're going to live here. God says that this is where you're going to live. And on the next trip up, we actually found Monroe. And the sign there's a big old sign that said Monrovian Park with an arrow going up. Think about that for a second. From Monrovian Park, what is this? At some point, we met up with Pastor Ryan, who is the pastor at the Calvary Chapel in Richfield. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself at that point because at that point in time, when we had first went up here, there was no Calvary Chapel in this area at all. I mean, there was a Baptist church, Assembly of God was up here, Catholic church, Presbyterian, RBC, I think was here. Oh, there was a Lutheran church. So there was no Calvary Chapel, so we figured, okay, this is kind of nice. We can, start something up here. And we went back and we stopped and talked to Pastor Rick and said, hey, well, we're going to pray about Richfield. It seems that God seemed to reveal to us as we go. Well, a couple of years later, we met up with Pastor Rick at a pastor's conference in Costa Mesa. And at first, he had this big smile on his face, like he was glad to see me. And then suddenly, his face dropped like, he wanted to hide. It's like, what happened? Something wrong, Do I smell or something? I don't know. I didn't know what was going on. Well, make a very long story short, he apologized. He had already sent up his youth pastor to Richfield to start Calvary Chapel in Severe Valley. And I had this, I had my smile, and I'm thinking, 5 years at that point was a long time to wait to plant a church. I hope everything goes well. That's great. That's wonderful. But inside, I'm sitting here thinking, Lord, you said we were going to go to Severe Valley. And, these pastors' conferences, they give you places to go to have some alone time with God. And God said, yeah, you are going in my time. Right now, you're in Monrovia. You are at Calvary Chapel in Monrovia. You are an elder at that point. I didn't become an assistant pastor until a year later. He says, you pay attention to Calvary Chapel in Monrovia. That is where I have you now. I get it. Because up to that point, Lisa and I were so focused on going to Utah. And so we took every Utah stuff down and just did my job at Monrovia. And God blessed it. A few years later, it was 2014. Pastor Richard lifted me up as an assistant pastor. And every now and then we think about it, and the Lord says, no, not yet. But then he added some encouragement. When the time comes, they are going to call you. It happened in 2016. As you can see, I still get emotional over that phone call. Actually, it was an email. Pastor Ryan had sent me an email. It was right around Christmas time. It was right before Amelia was born. And basically, it said, I heard from Pastor Rick that you're interested in coming up and planting a church. Are you still interested? Because I need help. I need your assistance now. And it's like, I couldn't type that response fast enough. And I showed it to Alicia, and she did the same thing I did. She just burst into tears. The call of the county. So after Amelia was born, we came up here and met with Pastor Ryan and his wife, and it all started coming together. We realized our original plan was to come up and plant a church was probably for this region was probably going too fast. God knew what he was doing even if I didn't. What we did was we went alongside as an assistant pastor to Pastor Ryan for a couple of years. And that was our plan. And we talked it out. This is what we're going to do. That way the community got to know me. Got to know that I was here for the long haul. I wasn't going to go away. And so we made all these talked about it and so forth. 2018 is getting closer. There was one point we came up to visit, to talk again. And Alicia's mother's heart was comforted by the medical facilities because both the girls got very ill while we were on one trip up here. Just childhood disease. But they were up. She had to take Amelia to the emergency room. She was 3 months old at that point. Yeah. And found out, it was a great hospital for a small town. For a small town in the middle of Utah, it was a great hospital. And Amelia was fine. And we managed to get back, but it confirmed to her that this is where we were supposed to go. And we got ready. I started trying to pass off ministries, the ministries I was in charge of, to other people. And we would come up looking for homes. And at the time, it didn't seem like there was a lot. And I'll be honest with you, rentals up here are rare. Yes. Okay? Very rare. If you're lucky to get one, grab it. Okay? Right now, even now, housing is pretty tight. And of course, because it's tight, it's relatively high. Not California high. Okay? Our house is currently worth $300,000. You've seen it. That would go for clearly $1 million in Southern California, easily, especially the property, over half an acre. And one time we came up, and I had a sore on my leg. Now, I'll freely admit I'm diabetic. I try to keep it controlled with diet. I haven't taken medication yet, but something had cut me, and it basically turned into a major ulcer. So we were here, and so I went over to the emergency room myself. to have them look at it. Okay? So what happens? Well, there's a huge car accident on 70, so I got thrown back because of that. Some woman comes in going through a diabetic coma. That bumped me. And someone else came in with a heart attack in a small hospital. So I'm sitting here with my leg up, and then this fellow comes in a wheelchair. His whole family's with him. They're all dressed up. They just come from a funeral. And the fellow is just bent over and clearly in pain. He's doing what we call Mormon cussing. Oh, darn. Dropped in a ditch. Oh, darn. Things like that. That's just how they do it up here. It's hilarious. And the family was just around them. They were, the hospital was there going through the check-in process for emergency. And Spirit says, go pray for him. Okay. So I get a hobble over and I asked him, do you mind if I pray for this fellow here? Yes, his name is Kent. Could you pray for him? Sure. So I prayed for him, just the typical, Lord, put your healing hand, take the pain away, and so on and so forth. And, just the normal prayer. Hands on him. And they thanked me profusely, and, I sat back down, and the pain went away. At least it lessened. Okay, he started talking normally again. He wasn't in pain. And his wife, she thanked me, and his dad is like, wow, I've never seen that. And his mother was just so fascinated by that. Where are you from? I'm from Southern California. I know, but, we're LDS, and what are you here for? Well, my plan is to plant a church here in the valley somewhere, probably down in the south end. I told him about myself and what we're doing. And she just asked so many questions. This is how you reach people up here, is you form that bond and relationship. And she was just, I thank you for what you did. It's like I didn't do it, the Son of God did. Jesus did that. That's healing. I can do nothing on my own. You use it as a witnessing tool. Well, eventually they wheeled him in, and then it was my turn. And everything was fine. All that to tell me that everything was fine. They treated it and so forth. And that was also confirmation. And this is where one of those times you actually see half the story. Very rarely do you see the sequel years later. The same guy, through that whole experience now, I'm not saying I did anything other than prayed for him, gave his life to the Lord, and landed at Calvary Severe while I was still there. Okay, and his wife was saved. And he thinks his mother might have gotten saved, and soon thereafter she started going into Alzheimer's. But she never stopped talking about that nice guy at the hospital that prayed for you. So I'm hoping that did have some effect on her. And even his dad was, Kent was baptized a couple of years ago, and his dad was there, still, was strong cowboy type. And he said, thank you for praying for my son, thank you for helping. And I said, sorry about your wife, I lost a wife. And he was really nice about it. I don't know if he got saved or not. Well, I heard he got in a car accident down near St. George driving his Cadillac at 120. He's that kind of guy, according to Ken. And Ken and I were still good friends. But it's interesting how that was verification. Yeah, you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to touch people. And it showed me an insight to the community up here. Now, I've been teaching about LDS at Bible Ministry School in Monrovia for several years. So it's like, I know how they think. But this showed me another side to it that actually was going to help me along the lines. Well, we're coming up to now June 2018. And I get a phone call from Ryan. He says, you know what? You need a house, right? Yeah, we weren't sure what we were going to do. Well, we got one for you. Really? Yeah, it's over in Main Street in Monroe. We were renting it out for some interns. They're moving out. The gal who owns it really wants to sell it, but since I talked to her, she'll rent to you. So it's $1,200 a month. And it's like, you interested? It's like, yeah, sure. And we got the paperwork in the mail. We signed sight unseen for that piece of land that we're on right now. That's faith. That is faith. Because you know that God has got your back. I stopped worrying about it because I saw how these doors were opening. Alicia stopped worrying for the most part, but there are still little times. She's a mom. She's wanting to make sure everything's okay. I retired June 2018. They threw me a nice big retirement party, and then I made the cake. It was really a neat little cake, and it was nice and so forth. July 1st, 2018, we had the truck filled up. And those that helped fill that truck up, you know what it was like. And we cried, and a bunch of the people from Monrovia helped us up here. And when I crossed the state line out of California and Nevada, knowing that was the last time I was leaving California as a resident, I just felt the Spirit saying, happy now? Are you happy now? This is what you wanted? And it's like, yeah. And we get up here, and there's people from Calvary Severe helping us to unload, and the guys from Calvary Monrovia. It was a great time. Those that came along on that trip, they still talk about it. I still don't know what happened in Las Vegas with a few of the guys, but somebody was looking for Costco to buy a toothbrush. It's like, who buys a toothbrush at Costco unless you're buying in bulk? Whatever. Yeah, I don't get it either, but something happened along those lines. Talk to Raphael about that. But, so let's fast forward. Okay, that's how I got up here. I had my retirement, but we were still a little tight financially, just a little. So God opened up a door over at the county jail as a teacher for state inmates to help them get their high school diploma. And so, it fit right in. It was a part-time gig. It was 18 hours a week. And so, it gave me a lot of time because it's all computer-based instruction. I don't have to really do anything except answer questions. And, I'm a 30-year teacher. I do know a lot about science and math and all these other things. And over the years, this year I had 4 graduates. They graduated this year. Before that, I think I had about 3 others. So 7 over the last 4 years. But God used that because being in the jail, let's face it, in a small rural Utah, you're going to run into people in the jail. Okay? Quite a few people in jail. So occasionally I have to take the teacher hat off and put on the pastor hat so I can get a prolonged visit. Jail regulations are pretty strict for obvious reasons. But you're able to touch these people. You're able to touch people who, like even some of the guards, one of the guards, come up to and say, how's it going? I always have a smile for them. How's it going? Oh, just living the life. And, usually it's like, oh, that's nice, but now it's like, I don't know whether to take that as a sarcastic remark or seriously. And she just unloaded about her life at that point. I found that if you ask someone up here how their day's going, be prepared for a long stay. Because you are probably going to hear it. It doesn't matter if they don't know you. The fact that you cared enough to ask them how they're going, or even if it's clearly they look miserable. And that was kind of the case with this girl. She looked pretty miserable. And from that point on, I wasn't a confidant or anything. But suddenly she would always smile back because she knew there's someone in this place that actually cares about my well-being. Okay, and a lot of the guards are the same way. And the sheriff's deputies in the area know who I am. Don't try to name drop. It probably will not give you a ticket if you're doing too far over the speed limit. If you're going 10 over the speed limit, they'll just pull you over and tell you to slow down. You go in at 80 in a 60 zone, you're going to get a ticket. And they know me. You'll see them wave as I go by. They know they drive back and forth. The sheriff lives in this area. He knows something's going on at our house every Thursday because the cars are everywhere. And what's happening? Oh, we have a Bible study home group. Oh, that's cool. We need more of that here. He's very LDS. But they recognize the need. And then, we started this church. I mean, the home group's been going on for almost 4 years, but we started this church in the middle of COVID, July 2020. All right? Yeah, nobody wore a mask. We did have the chairs separated, but as the people have been here since then, they've just pushed all the chairs back together. Okay? No one got ill. I think one point, we did have to cancel church on Sunday because I was sick and someone else was sick. And there's just too many people sick at that point, but not because of COVID. And I don't even think I had COVID at the time. I think it was just the flu. All right? But that's the only time we've ever canceled church. We had no issues. And God from day one, and like I said, a lot of you who came up that July were here helping us plant this thing. And it was great. It was beautiful, and it never stopped. It's great and beautiful now. And we've never had financial issues as a church. I'm not saying we have deep pockets. We don't. Okay? But we have never, check, we never had to think about buying something because we didn't have the money. Okay? Occasionally we would look at this and say, hey, I could do it. Say, yeah, I'll just buy that myself. Don't need to worry the church about it. No, I'm not going to turn in a reimbursement form. It's a tithe. Okay, things like that. But like the sound system, the old one we had worked, but man, it was a pain to haul around. We don't have young backs here. Amen. And so, we bought it. Okay. We needed a keyboard. That piano. Well, if you went to Sunday school back in the old days, and they had the out-of-tune piano that someone was playing the little songs like "This Little Light of Mine," and it sounded like all the notes were the same, even though you saw the lady going on different notes. That's similar to this. So we bought a keyboard. Lord provided the money, and we were able to do it. I mean, that's what it is. And it's what we need. And we would spend time up here with neighbors, not just me and Alicia, but Robert and Robin and Jeff and Christine, and everyone who comes here. Spend times with neighbors. And that's when they ask questions. That's when they want to talk to you. One of the things about living in this area is that a lot of people feel they have to live to this standard, and they can't get anywhere close. And unfortunately, their church is the one that pushes them to that extreme. So a neighbor will come over and just completely spill her guts to my wife because she's feeling, I can't do this. I'm inadimate. I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. I have to look perfect. And she's telling us. So they think, well, why aren't she telling anybody in her church? Because they'll tell on her, and she'll have their bishop call her in and chastise her how she's not being faithful. And she knows we don't do that. That's why we have that office where it is. So when the time comes, people can come in and talk to us and know that we aren't going to rat on them, but we care and we're willing to listen. And if they ask for advice, we give it to them. I don't know how many times Alicia has pointed women to read the Bible. No, LDS do not read the Bible. Well, they say they do, but they don't. There's a woman she knows that doesn't even know the story of Esther. I remember that from Sunday school. Okay? And what's fun is to hear about, oh yeah, I just finished 1 Corinthians. It's such a great book. This is an LDS person. You don't hear that often. Why? Because they said, read that book. Get into your word. Now they will still go to their church. They are going to go to their church. Here's why. A typical Mormon in Monrovia is going to be different than a Utah LDS person. And notice I did change the terms. Your typical Mormon in California is a convert. They got brought into the church for whatever reason. They were searching. And let's face it, these people are, I want these guys at my side when the bottom falls out. Because they are faithful, they are honest, you know what they say, they mean what they say. They are willing to help you when things are down. We had a member of our congregation whose son was killed in a car accident. She was not LDS, but the LDS allowed them to use the stake center for the funeral. That is how these people operate up here. And you are once you are part of the community, they don't really look at it unless you try to rock the boat too much. You don't take them toe to toe. You help. You assist. We had our neighbor, his father committed suicide about a year and a half ago. And the family was in complete disarray for what happened. For obvious reasons, that would shock anybody. As soon as we found out, we were over there asking, what can we do? We brought some food. What can we do? His mother, who was now a widow, I had a chance to chat with her. Being a widower, having lost my spouse, I chatted with her. And she will sing the praises of how great a family we are. because of the love we show of Christ. And a lot of them notice it's a different type of love than what they get from their own church. Relationships is how it works up here. And God has blessed what we've done so much by going slow and steady, being that relationship. Handing, we had some extra pizzas yesterday. There's a lot of debate of what to do with them. Oh, neighbors just got home. Hey, want a pizza? That's what you do. That's what you do. And their family, they just had a baby. Their family of 4 or 5 now. So it's like, yeah, here, let's have a pizza, go for it. And they remember stuff like that. We have a relationship where if I have to park on his yard, or he has to park on my yard if they're having family functions, we don't even ask each other. We know the answer is yes. Now, this last time when you guys showed up, he didn't, but because he didn't park on my side because he knew we were doing something on Friday. But that's how it works. They're good people, but they're lost. And that's the mission field that Calvary Chapel here, Little Green Valley Calvary Chapel, is working in. And now, something that I don't like doing, but something I do occasionally have to do, a couple of you I've talked to already, is the idea of people coming up to help. Not just for a weekend, not even for a week or two, but stepping out in faith and coming up here permanently. I'm not going to twist anyone's arm, but I want to tell you that it is a hard step of faith to do so. A lot of people will say, well, I love to, but. And I'll tell them, I can't get a job, we can't find a house, can't da-da-da-da. Well, if you own your house in California, you can buy any house up here, free and clear. Sell your house, even if you own a lot, if you have, $300,000, man, there's a house just down the street for sale, you can buy cash in the barrel, and that's a done deal. Okay, that's a nice house. It's an old house, but it's a nice house. Okay, but the idea of having younger couples coming up, or anyone who feels led to, and say, yeah, I want to do this. I want to invest myself in the ministry and help the kingdom of God advance in a spiritually dark area. It's not necessarily helping me or helping Alicia. It is the kingdom up there. Okay? The largest church in this valley is about 50. Okay? And I will say honestly, and that's one of the things you have to get used to, that number of people goes up and down radically from week to week, especially in the summer when everyone's we got to go up and go fishing, or we got to go camping, and suddenly you'll be preaching to an empty room, okay? Or hunting season. You realize there's a holiday, school holiday for hunting season. They call it fall break. But it's right in October, and I think it's 3 days off. Thursday, Friday, and Monday.
I always wondered why they do that.
That's why.
Why? There's 2 fall breaks.
That's why. It's hunting season. And a lot of people, the thing about hunting season is that's how these guys get their meat. They don't just go out there, kill them, and leave them lying. They bring it back, and if you've got a good-sized buck, you are feeding your family for the next year. Okay? And for the cost of processing, unless you're one of those guys that I'm a little scared of sometimes to do your own butchering. I guess I shouldn't be too scared. We butcher our own turkeys. There's a little different with that. I won't go into detail about that process. But, again, you feed your family. It's a different culture. It's a slow-down culture. It's interesting how the speed limit is 80, and really most of the people it's legal, but most of the people who travel that fast are from out of state. A lot of the locals don't. I don't. Okay? It's not that I'm afraid, it's just like, why? I'm not really that much of a hurry to get anywhere. Okay? Our idea of a traffic jam is getting caught behind a hay truck. Or when they start driving the sheep down Main Street in Monroe, they block the street down and you just sit there and wait as thousands of sheep go right down. In this time of year, you might actually catch it, maybe not. This time of year, they're going up into the hills, so they're going south. And then in the fall, they're coming in the opposite direction. Thousands and thousands of sheep. That's a tragedy. Now, there's a drawback. We have one Starbucks in town, and it's not a very good one. It's in Len's Market. Well, they make a decent iced tea, but they really don't know how to do it. I mean, you're asking people who don't drink coffee or tea to make coffee and tea. Okay?
Oh, Sid.
They try their best. That gives you a hint. We've got Gigi's Market here in town. It's a good market, good prices. I mean, unlike I used to camp all the time with my parents, and we were always wary of small town markets. They were usually inflated prices, you know. Even back in the 80s, you were paying $3 a gallon for a gallon of milk. And at the time, it was maybe $1 in California.
Their
Okay.
Carl's Jr. sets apart. With Calvary.
Oh yeah, that works. But you have, you got Walmart, decent market, got Lynn's, and that's it. No Trader Joe's. Nearest Trader Joe's is in Provo, no, Orem, which is about a 2-hour drive. Okay, nearest In-N-Out, hour and a half up in Spanish Fork. That's the nearest Chick-fil-A too. Yes. Telling all the important things. Okay. For those who like Mexican food, I hate to disappoint you. What we have here at Del Taco is great. Okay. Well, Costa Villa is okay. I think it's too sweet.
It's like Chipotle.
It's a very rough imitation of Chipotle. Yeah.
You just talked about it.
I won't even talk about tacos. Nor Taco Bell. But they're not that far away. The mindset up here is, I'm living in the country. For those with big box, nearest Costco is an hour and a half in Spanish Fork. Nearest Sam's Club is 2 hours in Provo. Okay, which is just beyond Spanish Fork. Actually, only 2 hours, about an hour and 45. So what do people do? You want to go, someone wants to go up to do a Trader Joe's run. Someone lets everybody know, I'm going to go to Trader Joe's. Fine, this is what I want. Give them the list, give them the money. And then boom, they come back and you got your Trader Joe's run. And you rotate around that so people, everyone gets a chance to get out of town. And you make a rule. If you go out of this town, you will not eat at a restaurant you find in Richfield. So you're not going to Costa Villa. Okay? You're not going to Wendy's. You're not going to Denny's in Salina, which actually is an excellent restaurant, I'll tell you that right now. But it's Denny's. Yeah, that tells you something. It's a good restaurant, trust me. And it's the only restaurant that's open on Sunday nights in the entire county. Probably the entire 3 counties around us. Okay? That's what happens. Things are closed on Sunday. All right? Now the markets are open. Gigi's is open in the afternoon, and Lynn's and Walmart are open. But as for restaurants, stay home. Enjoy the family. Enjoy where God has placed you. I mean, I always look out in my backyard, and all of you have seen it. This is my backyard. I'm not on vacation. This is where God has placed me. And I pray for people to have that like mine. Like I said, I'm not twisting arms or trying to lay a guilt trip. Every missionary will tell you that they appreciate short-term trips. I'm the first to will tell you that's great, that's wonderful. But deep down, what the missionaries don't tell you is, can't we have someone stay full-time for a while? Even if it's for 3 or 4 years. Now, going to India, going to Bangladesh, going to Mexico, going to, well, maybe not so much Mexico because there's a lot of nice places down there, but, Thailand or a lot of these, Central Africa, a lot of these is like, I don't want to spend 2 years there. Well, you might. God may change your heart and say, I love this place. And to be honest, that's how I look at it up here. Even though we're part of the United States, 63% of this county identifies as LDS. That's a huge number. This town, Monroe and Joseph, that number is as high as 89%. We are the minority. And when people come up, they look at you at first because you're a newcomer. They kind of hang back a little bit. Some will come out to you. Most will hang back to see if you're going to stick around. And once it's clear you're there for good, you're part of the community, and that that you're in. Why? What if I can't find a job? Do you think God is going to bring you up here and leave you high and dry? What if I don't like the schools? There's a thing called homeschool. Everybody discovered it during COVID, and a lot of people have decided they want to stick with it. California, I keep up with the news down there from my teacher friends. They're looking at a 30% enrollment drop this coming school year because people are discovering they like homeschool and they want to keep at it. And of course, that's bad news for schools because money makes the school system work. My most important job as a school teacher was to take roll. That's where the money came from. Okay. This is what I want you to pray about. You're here. Spend the next, before you leave, however, you guys are probably leaving pretty early tomorrow. But, after we're out of here, spend some time alone with God and say, Lord, do you want me up here? And he'll give you the answer. If the answer is no, the answer is no. Okay, some people, no, I can't do this. I don't feel led. But if you feel that leading, it's like, okay, Lord, do you want me here? And think about it. Pray about it. Because this is the real need. I mean, the blessing we got from the construction you guys did, I can't thank you enough. When people ask me, what do you need? And that was my answer. We need more workers up here. We need more people who are willing to take that step of faith and come alongside the work here. Okay? Because that, it's like Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So, pray to the Lord of the harvest for more workers. That's what we do on a daily basis. Okay? We're a very small fellowship, and that has its advantages. I look back fondly at Monrovia when it was our size, where we met in the First Christian Church across from the park in Monrovia. Wednesday nights was in someone's living room. Robbie was the children's ministry. I love that time because I remember back at that time because we all had connections together. We knew one another. Everyone who was hurting, we hurt with them. When they were rejoicing, we rejoiced with them. We have that same thing here. And in fact, up here, here's a thought, too. If the church is getting too big, we're not thinking about finding a bigger building. That means it's time to send someone else out because this area needs it. But there are too many churches together. Well, not really. That's the one nice thing about LDS. They're used to neighborhood churches. Their philosophy is if their ward gets to about 100, gets over 100, they break that ward up into 2 wards, and then they have a pastor, which they call a bishop, over both of them. So they're used to walking to work. So if we had a Calvary chapel, say in Elsinore, or one in, instead of meeting here, they're meeting in Monroe or in Annabelle or any little towns around here, no one would think that anyone's stepping on anyone's toes. Because that's the way it works. That's the way the Word of God in the book of Acts, that's the way the church spread. Got too big, they got too comfortable, now they just spread them out. Go out there. Preach the Word. I'm hoping that I don't appear like I'm trying to strong arm. If I am, maybe there's a guilty conscience going on. And those who know me know that I'm very blunt. Okay? But I also know that I love every single one of you, even those that I have not met before this weekend. I love every single one of you. And of course, I love my flock, who I have around me, who have supported me through all the hard times I went through. I mean, it's not easy being a pastor up here. I had a lot. My mother died in 2021. She was up here dealing with probate, California probate. Utah probate's over. California probate is like, okay, what's going on, But God is going to take care of us all. Even if you don't feel led to be up here, don't worry about us. God will provide somebody. But if God is whispering in your ear, or in many cases screaming in your ear, to think about this, don't worry about the excuses. let God do him. He is an awesome God. He takes care of his children, and no one has to worry about it. If the lack of a Starbucks stops you, get a life. Yeah, McDonald's actually has better coffee than Starbucks. So, yeah. And it's cheaper. Though I wouldn't know, I don't drink coffee anyway. But they have like their dollar iced teas. So. Father, we thank you for this time I've been able to share my heart as a pastor. And I ask you now, Father, just to bless our fellowship that we're going to have. And also move in the heart of those who maybe you want them to stretch out of their comfort zone in some way. Maybe not necessarily coming up here, but in some way, shape, or form. Because that comfort zone, sometimes we don't want to leave. I know it was comfortable for years to have a steady job. And then going off on retirement into an unknown area was very frightening, but I also knew you had my back and this was your will, so I didn't let it bother me. And I know, Father, that Father, that you have all of us in your hands. So we ask you now as we sing this last song of worship to, again, be with us. Your Spirit is here with us now, Father. We praise you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. So, let's go ahead and stand.